Over to you.
Namaste and greetings. I, Tripta, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Talk. We are gathered today for a panel discussion on rural realities and the Union Budget 2024-25. This deliberation is a part of IMPRI fifth annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of the Union Budget 2024-25, which is a series of panel discussions on crucial key policy issues and Union Budget 2024-25, involving more than 100 thematic distinguished experts and research team members. This discussion is organized by the Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, CHURS, IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. As a part of IMPRI Web Policy Talk series, The State of Villages, #Rural Realities. Now let me introduce the esteemed gathering that we have here today. Our chair for the session is Dr. J. Dennis Rajakumar ji, Director, Economic and Political Weekly Research Foundation, EPWRF, Mumbai, and also visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI. We welcome you, sir. Today's deliberation comprises of an excellent distinguished panel of experts who will be sharing their expertise, which includes Professor R S Deshpande ji, former professor and director, Institute for Social and Economic Change, Bangalore, also visiting distinguished professor IMPRI. We also have Mr. VR Raman ji, Executive Director, Center for Budget and Governance Accountability, CBGA, visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI. We have Professor C.S.C. Sekhar ji, Professor, Institute of Economic Growth, IEG, New Delhi. We have Dr. Donthi Narasimha Reddy ji, I hope I'm getting the name right, Member State Advisory Committee, Telangana State Electricity Regulatory Commission, guest faculty, ICMR, National Institute of Nutrition, adjunct professor, Padala Rama Reddy Law College, Hyderabad, and also visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. We have Dr. Javed Alam Khan ji, Senior Fellow, Center for Budget and Governance Accountability, CBGA, and also visiting senior fellow, IMPRI. We also have Mr. Ramanjanayelu, GVG, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Agriculture, Telangana. And last but not the least, we have Professor Gumadi Sridevi ji, Professor, School of Economics, University of Hyderabad, visiting Professor IMPRI. We are extremely grateful to have such a distinguished panel of experts joining us today. Proceeding further, I welcome all the participants to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for being interested and putting your time, energy, and efforts into understanding the nuances of the rural realities that India faces and its inclusion within the union budget, while helping us to bring together the practitioners and participants through this course for impactful discussion. Now, without further ado, let us start the program. I would like to call upon Dhruv to go forward with the PPT for today and give us a brief introduction and overview of the new budget. Over to you, Dhruv.
Thank you, Tripta. I'll just share my screen. So, as introduced by Tripta itself, we are here for Rural Realities and Union Budget of 2024-25. So quickly summing up the highlights from the budget 2024, the total allocation for rural development was rupees 2.66 lakh crores, which is a total of 16% increase from compared to the previous allocation, wherein rupees 1.05 lakh crore will be invested in rural infrastructure and including roads, bridges, and rural connectivity projects. Where agriculture support has been extended to 45,000 crores to enhance agricultural productivity and irrigation systems. wherein employment generation schemes of rupees 30,000 crores will be used to create employment opportunities and support rural job schemes such as Manrega, uh, and skill development program of rupees 10,000 crores is allocated for rural skill development program, aiming to increase the employability. Uh, so as we can see in this slide as well, the the total center expenditure for establishment of center schemes, which are management support to rural development programs and strengthening of district planning processes, including grants to National Institute of Rural Development, have been increased from previous years, which used to be 200 crores, 200,000 crores to 250,000 crores. And bodies such as National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj has been also increased. More coming on to more detailed part of it, the education funding has also been increased. The healthcare improvement and digital connectivity, which would be further explained by the panelists of the program. The free ration scheme, the PM Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, has been extended for another 5 years, but it has seen allocation decline. The biggest increase in allocation among the major central schemes was the PMAY rural and urban schemes. The rural scheme saw it outlay rise of rupees 30,000 crores, from 32,000 crores to 54,500 crores, which is an increase of 22,500 crores. Uh, the Moreover, the Jal Jeevan Mission, for instance, saw its outline rise slightly from last year's from 70,000 crores to 70.163 thousand crores. And the insurance and infrastructure programs under Ayushman Bharat saw total allocation rise from rupees 8,900 crores to 10,500 crores, with a target of 200 lakh hospital admissions this year across 2,100 empaneled hospitals. This is a snippet from the Rural Development Authority budget allocation PDF only. And as you can see, highlighted also, the total Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee has also been has also been has been stagnant, and there is no what do you say increase in that. Lastly, coming on to the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, which includes transfer of rural roads and infrastructure funds, program components left from central road to infrastructure funds, agricultural infrastructure, and a lot of infrastructural push has been given this time. So the total centrally sponsored schemes have seen an increase for this year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dhruv, for giving us an overview of the new budget. We are really grateful for that. Now, moving on, it is my honor and privilege to invite Dr. J. Dennis Rajakumarji to start the program with the chair's opening remarks and proceed with the panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Arjun Kumar, for organizing this event on rural realities and Union Budget 2024-25. I think I must compliment IMPRI for taking this initiative. And I'm just observing that this topic on rural realities and Union Budget remains core to IMPRI for last 2 to 3 years, if I'm not wrong. I hope they will carry on with this initiative. Now, coming to the topic, let me share some thoughts. This is just to provide some leads for our discussion. In my view, our country's growth prospects, whatever said and done, continues to be tied to the rural sector, regardless of the extent of urbanization that has taken place in the last 2 decades or so. We all know that we look up to the budget to boost economic activities. So obvious question here is what the budget holds for rural sector. In order to understand this, we have to also understand the rural realities so that we'll be able to decipher what the budget could do to make things better in the rural sector. So to provide some perspectives for our discussion, let me go through some statistics, which essentially will cover aspects related to output, employment, and rural inflation. I won't take more time, but I'll be very brief when I provide some of these statistics. We know that both farm sector as well as non-farm sector have become mainstay in the rural sector. But rural sector primarily relies on the primary sector. I'll show some more statistics to substantiate this point. And when we talk about farm sector, we are essentially talking about agriculture and allied activities. Now, what's the kind of growth rate we are observing? The agriculture sector and agriculture sector primarily is in the rural sector. And this sector is expected to grow at about 4.7% in 22-23 against economy-wide growth rate of 6.7%. So as such, the rate at which agriculture is growing is lesser than the overall economic growth. What is more, according to the provisional estimates we have for the year 2023-24, agriculture sector is expected to record the lowest growth rate at 1.4%, lowest recorded in the last 7 years, compared to the overall growth rate of 7.2%. So this is the plight of the farm sector, which drives the rural sector. Now, so far as non-farm sector in the rural areas, we do not have much statistics because the non-farm sector covers a chunk of formal sector. And for us, with lack of statistics or related to non-farm sector in the rural sector, we may not be able to make out what's happening in the non-farm sector of rural areas. But then when I see annual survey of industries data, which gives the breakup of the industrial output between rural and urban, what I have noticed is the share of rural sector in the industrial output has been on the rise. In fact, it was 49% in 2017-18, and it has risen to 52% in 21-22. And that's the latest year for which we have the data insofar as C.S.C is concerned. So in a way, we are seeing that industries are getting either relocated, or we are seeing that urban sector is losing out to rural sector insofar as industries are concerned. So therefore, now if at all we talk about distress in manufacturing, then with the 52% of the output originating from this sector, we will know that how the distress will get magnified in the rural sector as well. So it is not about the performance of farm sector per se, but it is the performance of non-farm also now begins to impact the rural sector. Now, let me present some statistics on the employment. We have annual periodic labor force survey, which gives statistics of the rural sector because it is annual figure. We have the statistics available for the year 2022-23. That's the latest year for which it is reported. What we are seeing here is labor force participation rate. That is the percentage of persons in the labor force to the number of employed and number of unemployed in the population. This LFPR is going up insofar as rural sector is concerned, from 37% in 2017-18 to 43.4% in 2022-23. So it appears, and simultaneously, we are also seeing that unemployment rate, that is the percentage of persons unemployed among the persons in the labor force, has dropped from 5.3% to 2.4%. So it looks like the employment in the rural sector is on the upward trend. But what matters here is the composition of unemployment by sector. When we look at over these last 5-6 years, whether there has been any structural transformation in the rural unemployment, our answer is no, because primary sector continues to absorb bulk of this rural labor force. More than 60% is getting absorbed by the primary sector, and the remaining 40% is almost equally divided between secondary and tertiary sector. So we don't see much change occurring in the rural insofar as sectoral composition is concerned. So what does it mean? If anything happens to the primary sector, like I said, the growth rate is going to be recorded one of the lowest in the last 7 years. This is going to be a major determining factor for rural welfare. Now, let me also substantiate this point, how things may not be looking that good in rural sector, by giving you some numbers related to rural wage rates. Here, as you know, the rural wage rate, the statistics come with some delay, and we have data for the year 2020, June 2023. Now, I have taken two type of occupation to understand the trends in the rural wage rate. One is ploughing, wage rates for ploughing to reflect what's happening in the agriculture occupation, and the wage rates of mason to understand non-agriculture occupation. Insofar as wage rates of ploughing is concerned, it has gone up from 385 rupees in June 2023 to 409 rupees in June 2023, an increase of 6.2% on year-on-year basis. Now, similarly, the wage rates of mason also has gone up by 6.6% between these two periods, from 555 rupees in June 2022 to 592 rupees in June 2023. So while we say that wage rate has been on the rise, it has to be indexed to the overall inflation rate in the rural sector. So here I have considered CPI for rural labor, which shows 6.2% rise during this period. That is between June 2022 to June 2023. Now, what does it mean? The rate of increase in the wage rate is just an illusion, because the workforce in rural areas are not anything better off because of this inflation factor. Now, how this inflation compares with urban inflation, for which we have some statistics from CPA base year 2011. According to that, we see that CPA for rural sector is 4.9%, right? And this is, CPI in rural sector stood at 5.7% in June 2024, compared to urban inflation rate of 4.4%. So in other words, if some indication we are picking up from the inflation tendencies between rural and urban, it's quite clear that rural workers are becoming worse off. So, looking at the agriculture growth rate, which predominantly relates to rural sector, looking at sectoral composition of the employment, looking at the wage rates, we find that not all that is well in the rural sector. Now, there were some slides presented a few minutes back where we see some rise in the allocation for rural development across various programs, across different departments, etc. So the question is whether this rise is just nominal. Are they sufficient? Are they sufficient to alleviate rural misery? This is the larger issues that we will have to reflect. Now we have got an excellent distinguished panelist here with us to discuss these varied issues. We will stick to the overall plan given by the organizers, that each speaker will speak for about 8 minutes in round one. Then we will have question and answers for 25 minutes. Then towards the end, each speaker will give what is the way forward in 2 minutes. Then we can close the session. And I wish to invite the panelists as in the same order that is being listed here in the program schedule. So now may invite Professor R S Deshpande. Professor Deshpande.
Yes. Good morning. Still there are 2 minutes for 12 o'clock. So we always go by the British etiquettes that before 12 o'clock it's morning, after 12 o'clock it's afternoon. So I'm at a threshold of what to wish. Anyway, it was pleasure to listen to you, sir. Wonderful presentation with a lot of support of statistics. I would put only 3 points. Number one is about the realities, what we talk. Not is overall impact. The rural realities. When I talk about rural realities, I don't need statistics because there are certain things which are well known. Number one, the prices of agriculture products, the growth rate in the prices of agriculture products as against the growth rate in the factors used in agriculture, there is a gap, and this gap is increasing over years. Thereby, it very clearly states that the agriculturist's take-home salary or take-home income is reducing over time, number one. Number two, commercialization has put its step forward. Large number of farmers are getting into commercial agriculture, and why not?
Professor
Hello?
Deshpande, we are missing you on and off.
Yes, sir.
Are you able to hear now?
Yes, yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Are you able to hear now?
Yes, yes.
I think we missed last your. Yes, sir. We missed your last
No,
point.
I'll put off the video, okay? Because it gives internet connection is kindly some of you may put off the video so that the internet connection does not go. If I have too many videos on in my computer, the internet connection goes. I'm old computer user. Anyway, the second point I was making was that the commercialization of agriculture, the pace at which the commercialization has been taking place is significantly high. And we have crops like soybean, we have new crops getting into. And this budget has provided some kind of supply chain management for vegetables and fruits, etc. Good. These are the things which largely take care of the urban consumers as against the rural consumers, because the supply chain is required for them. Rest of them have it in the village itself. Now, third point is that rural roads and infrastructure, there has been some kind of attention to it. but it needs to be prioritized. The most important thing is rural markets. If we calculate the market density today, the farmer has to travel, a small and marginal farmer has to travel at least a few hours to reach a market on an average. There are some places where the markets are about 8 hours from the place of the farmer. Now, we have not paid attention to market density or market reforms. We have had 91 reforms of many things. We have lifted market controls on many things, but agriculture stayed on the margins as it usually. The reforms in the agriculture sector, it's not once. In fact, during Professor Manmohan Singh's time, there were 5 or 10 committees which have suggested various reforms which were very quietly shelved and we do not know anything about it. For example, Abhijit Sen Committee on Long-Term Grain Policy. It states very clearly that we should have a public distribution system decentralized. But then nothing has been done about it. It still happens to be centralized. It says that the procurement and distribution should be decentralized. Anyway, I'm quoting only one. I don't have much of the time. I can quote more. Then labor. I am very happy that you have quoted wages data and labor. Wages data is collected from Indian 600 villages, 3 to 4 persons from each village, and these are cultivators, not the wage earners, because the cultivators are listed in the household listing. Wage earners not necessarily listed because they are moving around, and therefore wage data what is given and long back in 1969 or somewhere nearing 70, Professor V.M. Rao had written about the pathetic condition of wage data. Then one of my students, Jayanti Ghanekar, she wrote somewhere in 90s in EPW about the pathetic condition of wage data. And then Papola committee talked about the wage data. In any case, only thing is that our wage data is not dependable. Labor is short in rural areas. You ask the farmer, what is your major problem? Two things. One, prices, and the market accessibility. And second, labor availability. Now, as far as this is concerned, we don't, and today farmers are very concerned that I don't get labor because they prefer to go to MGNRGS. So I don't get it on my farm. The next thing is urban expansion. Urban expansion has been taking so much that the rural labor, following the Levisian theorem, wants to go to urban areas for construction work. These are major problems. One thing is that the growth in NREGS attendance itself tells us that either the rural poverty is increasing substantially, if we take the argument of Sitaraman, that when the EPFO has been increasing substantially, employment is increasing. Anyway, similar logic is here. The MGNREGS attendance has been increasing substantially. The growth is about 8% over years, which means we have been able to sustain, I repeat, we have been able to sustain rural poor under poverty. But then a large number of them find their place in urban areas with the construction work. As a result, 5 million cultivators, 5 million cultivators from 1991 to 2011 have left cultivation. And this is from the census data. The population census of 1991 and population census of 2011. If you look into the number of cultivators, you'll find that 5 million have left cultivation. There are, get into agriculture census data, there is increase in number of holdings. And number of holdings is Professor Deshpande having land in the rural area, and in the rural area, under the agriculture census, he is noted as cultivator. Our all MPs, and in fact, the last parliament, we had 58% of our members of parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, as agriculturists. So these all agriculturists are noted in agriculture census. But they do not say, when they are asked in the population, are you a cultivator? No, 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 no. I am a professor. Now, this is the thing. As far as budget is concerned, there are 5 components that budget has pressurized. Vegetable supply chain. Certainly, this is in order to feed the urban areas. And as you rightly said, that the inflation has made little impact on the rural sector, because we thought that if we are paying more for vegetables, the farmer will be paying less for the vegetable because he has it there only. No, no, no. He also has to, because there is one class which has very dominantly emerged in agriculture right from the 1967 onwards. This is called the aggregators. Aggregators are present everywhere, and aggregators are non-cultivators, sometimes cultivators. They aggregate the product and come and sell it in the market. As a result, something which we have not able to, or we have not put our hands sufficiently, agriculture economists, that something called market margins. There are papers. Market margins have been increasing substantially. That onion, which is purchased at 2 rupees 50 paise in the rural market, is sold at 24 rupees and sometimes 100 rupees in the urban market. The gap is so much that the farmer who works for almost 6 months to get onion, he gets 4 5 rupees, 8 rupees, 10 rupees. The middlemen or aggregators get about 50 to 70 rupees in their pocket, who works only for a week or 2 days in the week. Now, coming to the second thing, there is a national cooperative policy. Cooperation has failed. In fact, cooperation has absorbed millions of rupees of the government. In fact, this particular thing, recently in the Maharashtra, they have given loans to certain cooperative sugar factories because they were not able to run them properly. Their inefficiency is paid by the government. If they are inefficient, they must close. But still, millions of rupees have been given to cooperative sugar factories. So the national cooperative policy, I have my own take. I will not get into more. Agriculture research, revamping of agriculture research. I don't know what does that mean. But then in our agriculture research, largely it is supply forced rather than demand generated. What farmer wants? Does he want climate resilient agriculture, or he wants a new soybean variety, or he wants a new oilseed variety, or he wants a new ragi variety? We don't ask. We have an ICAR project which has to work on this. And so I work on casuarina. I don't work on anything else. I see a beautiful casuarina plantation in front of me. I work on casuarina because casuarina is a paying job. The next thing is, as far as oil seeds and pulses are concerned, we have had NODP and NOPP, 2 very huge projects. And at that time, around 87, 88, 89, 90, at that time, I had evaluated both National Oilseed Development Program and National Pulses Development Program. Both the programs, Government of India had claimed that we are self-sufficient and we are going to export. What happened on the way? From 90s onwards, did we go so bad in oilseeds and pulses that we have to undertake a new program? There is one thing. There is a failure in research and development in oilseeds and pulses program. And last one is 109 climate resilient. Now, a farmer to accept climate resilient variety is difficult. Farmer wants a variety which pays rich dividends. Now, coming to the only the 2 nitty-gritties of the budget. I think Dhruv quoted a little, he quoted from the earlier budget figure. It is on the revised estimate, and in agriculture, it has increased by 8%. In rural development, it has increased by 11%. But as an overall percent of total budget, agriculture remains at 3%, which was at 3.12% earlier budget. And rural development remains at 5.5%, which was 5.3% earlier, slight increase. Now, if we get it at per capita level or per net cropped area level, possibly over years, in real terms, somebody should take it up. Over years, in real terms, the budget provided to agriculture has been going down or stagnant. Budget provided to rural development over year, I'm talking in real terms, because inflation rate is 5% above. And long-term inflation rate, even if you take at 4%, the 3% increase or 3.5% increase will be wiped off. And therefore, the real terms is, the good thing about the budget is that fiscally it is well managed budget. Two, it has placed, and I had written some time back, I titled it, and somebody liked the title, Bandaging the Bruises in the Election. I described the budget that way, that in the election, the government had got certain bruises. The first bruise was on employment. Second one was on the farmer. Third one was on the females. And like this, on growth, and inflation. Now, the budget was effort to bandage or to attend to the bruises that they suffered during the election. It's difficult that bruises can be bandaged, but deep wounds, it needs a focused attention. I think I finished my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Oh, you are listening, isn't it? Because I didn't get response. Was it clear? Audible? Was it audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting various issues. One point that I'll pick up from you is, what is the share of farmers in the total, price of the output of the price of the crops?
Not
That
more than
is,
30%.
yeah.
Not
so,
more than 30%. And there is one thing, Rajkumar ji, there is
Yes,
one
sir.
thing which I need to, that you have put a very interesting point, that, and I wrote some time back, when agriculture performs, the entire economy performs, the GDP performs. When agriculture dips down, the GDP dips down. And one of my great economist friends said that after all, agriculture's contribution is only 16%. Why should it dip down? It has a large spillover effect. And this spillover effect is yet to be brought to the books by economists or by researchers.
So are we creating enough agriculture infrastructure in the rural sector so that the supply chain, whatever we are talking about, would enable the farmers to have a better share in the price than what they are getting? Because right now it is all shared by, or most of these prices, captured by aggregators now. So this is an important issue. I think
it will be difficult to remove the pujari from the temple. It will be impossible, because aggregators are so well entrenched that unless the farmer, like what is done in Telangana, the farmers' markets are proliferated over regions, then only aggregators will go down. But there too, they are smart enough to capture it.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Now we'll move on to the next speaker, Mr. VR Raman, Executive Director, Center for Budget and Governance Accountability. Over to you, sir. Is there?
I think
having throat infection. Yeah.
Okay, then we'll go to the next speaker, Professor C.S.C. Sekhar from IEG. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Rajkumar. And actually, Dr. Rajkumar and Professor Deshpande both have put the issues in perspective. Dr. Rajkumar has given us a number of figures, statistics, and rightly put agriculture at the center of the entire rural landscape. I think that's very important. And Professor Deshpande has highlighted the issues of policy apathy and also the stagnating budgetary allocations for agriculture and rural development. Now, to me, actually, when this new government took over recently, I was very excited because for the first time in many years, I have seen that there was a single one minister for agriculture and rural development. So I thought actually there is going to be some integrated or a holistic approach to rural development, placing agriculture at the center of the rural development process. But when I saw the budget and the allocations there, I must confess I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because not only was there no vision for agriculture as such, but there was hardly any holistic approach to agriculture and rural development. So this is the first issue. And number two, when you look at the budgetary allocations either in agriculture or in the rural development sector, particularly in agriculture sector, what we find is that if we see the budgets over the last 4 or 5 years, there doesn't seem to be any continuity, in the sense that there is one program which gets an enhanced allocation in 1 year and the next year it's gone, and it doesn't figure anywhere in the next year. For example, this year I see that there is a huge allocation for price stabilization fund of 10,000 crores, and there was hardly an allocation last year. And what is the rationale for that? Either the finance minister or the agriculture minister or anyone for that matter has specified anywhere. Why a particular program, price stabilization fund, gets 10,000 crores suddenly from zero last year is anybody's guess. Do you expect the food inflation to really go that high? Are you expecting huge supply side shocks in agriculture? What exactly is prompting this kind of thing? So this is one thing. This is only an example. So this lack of holistic approach to rural development and agriculture is the most important thing to me, because agriculture, as Dr. Rajakumar has rightly said, is right at the center of the rural development process. If you see rural economy, we can classify that into two groups. One is the rural economic ecosystem, and the other is the other social development. Social development is health, education and other things, and rural economy means basically the agriculture, non-farm and all other activities, rural industrialization, all those economic activities in the rural areas. So if we see any allocations for rural development, we should see them, or at least I would like to see them as a part of growth enhancing activities for the rural sector. If that is the case, there are a number of important programs in the rural sector. For example, National Rural Livelihood Mission. Now, this is a very interesting program, very important program, where self-help groups are formed and they're given hand-holding and also the credit facilities to take up economic activities, particularly the women self-help groups. Now, a few years ago, I was a part of an independent evaluation committee of the Rural Development Ministry, and we happened to visit some of the very backward villages in Uttar Pradesh. And what we find there is really an eye-opener. There was agricultural activity. For example, there were pulses being grown in a particular village, and the women who were under NRLM were taking up activities like candle making, pickle making, basket making and stuff like that. Why should it be like that? Why shouldn't the economic activities be dovetailed with the whatever self-help group activities that the women are undertaking? For example, if the pulses are being grown, why not a dal mill and ask the women groups to take up that activity? So this kind of coordination, functional coordination between agriculture ministry and the rural development ministry is completely missing. That is because there were two different ministers for a long time for these two ministries, but when the recent government, when the new government took over, I was very confident that, okay, at last we're going to see some kind of an integration of this, but that didn't happen. That's the first thing. And secondly, the second worrying thing for me is not just this budget, but over the last few budgets, if you see, the budgetary estimates are far higher than the revised estimates for any year. Every year you pick up the budgetary estimates of any particular program are way ahead or way higher than revised estimates in the agriculture ministry. It's not in the rural development programs. What does that mean? What it means is that you're allocating certain amount for an activity, and you are at the end of the year, you see that you are unable to use up that, and you are revising your estimate downwards. It means there are only two things. One, either you are finishing the task with a much lower cost, or you are not accomplishing the task at all. I would think the second is most probably true, because we can't expect that the efficiency has improved so much that you are accomplishing the task with 25% of the cost or anything. So this has been a worrying feature if someone actually takes up an analysis of the budget over the years. And this has continued in this year also. Various programs under agriculture, I see that the revised estimates are way lower than the budgetary estimates. And Rural Development Ministry is slightly better because the number of programs in Rural Development Ministry is small, and they are large programs, and mostly they are supply driven kind of they are not demand driven kind of programs. So it's easier to administer in the Rural Development Ministry than in the Agriculture Ministry. So these are the two things that I want to highlight. And with this, I also want to say that this budget, although it has increased, like Professor Deshpande has mentioned, there is some talk in the budget speech about research and development in agriculture. But again, the kind of focus on a particular climate resistant varieties and only varietal development is I think a very narrow way of looking at research and development in agriculture. There has to be a lot more. Actually, a lot of focus needs to be on the extension part. Whatever is developed is not actually reaching the farms, and the farmers are not actually being made aware of the necessary practices to take care of or take advantage of those improved varieties. So this research expenditure, merely increasing the research expenditure is not enough if you are focusing narrowly on varietal development, but it should be a broad-based and mostly extension-based spending. And other than that, actually, there is some talk about there is some mention of rightly mention about pulses and oil seeds, the efforts to increase pulses and oil seeds production, but there is hardly any measure that has been outlined, or there is any budgetary allocation made for that. And what I expect is that the government will come out with some focused programs for oil seeds and pulses sectors. If that happens, that's very good. And similarly, I am really at a loss to understand about this 1 crore farmers into natural farming. I think Dr. Ramanjanayil is here. He will be able to tell us more about that. But I think more work needs to be done in this natural farming thing to see all the implications of switching to natural farming, rather than a hasty pushing farmers through a supply side measure. It should be demand and organically driven kind of an approach, with demand coming from the farmers to switch to natural farming. Your government should be a facilitator rather than pushing or rather promoting natural farming in a major way, and then at a later stage probably finding that that decision was not the right one. And one thing that I am really two particular things which are encouraging this budget are the public digital public infrastructure. Although There has been talk about this digital public infrastructure, whether it's agri-stack or anything, for quite some time now. But I hope this will be expedited sooner than later, and this is taken to its logical conclusion, because digital public infrastructure in agriculture is the most essential thing for many of the programs to actually, the benefits of many of the programs to reach farmers. And the second one is the digitization of the land records and linking it up with the land registries in the rural areas. Again, the talk about this has been on for quite some time, but I hope it will be taken in the right earnest and it will be completed soon. So these are two very important initiatives which should be taken up. And finally, the clusters for village production, I think, is a good initiative. Again, there are hardly any focused initiatives or budgetary allocations. I hope there will be good program that will be rolled out for vegetable production along with pulses and oils. If that happens, that will be a good thing. But there's not much concrete in this budget, which I would have liked to see. With that, I'll stop and I'll come back in the discussion stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Particularly you had highlighted how the revised estimates, RE, tends to be always lower than the P, particular across rural programs. I think it's a very important aspect. I'm not too sure whether it can be related to task not completed, but probably at the time of presenting budget, we see a lot of rhetoricism going on. Maybe it is all to patch up that rather than being serious about doing some work at the rural areas. But then the question is, how much of budgeted BE is not being spent? That remains a big question. And if there is a kind of trend in this, then it is important to highlight that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
in fact, I just want to say one thing. Actually, this is a problem with the agriculture ministry. In the rural development ministry, you will see that most of the allocated budgets are used up, and they are actually, there the performance is much better in the rural development programs. In agriculture ministry, this has been a persistent problem.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to the next speaker, Dr. D. Narasimha Reddy. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with most of the points raised by all the three speakers. In fact, when I was looking at the panelists, almost out of 10, 8, at least 6 by names, they are from South India. So there is a criticism on this budget that it has, neglected South India. So maybe our viewpoints will be taken like that. I mean, that's on the lighter side. But anyway, I think, just to respond to some of the points raised by Professor Sekhar, that revised estimates is across, for all the ministries, and that is reduced later, because now, right now they pull it through politically. Like, agriculture is always mentioned as a priority in every budget, and then they reduce the allocation later. So that has been a feature. In fact, even looking at through discomfort with some of the figures, I think we should ask for reforms in the budget book presentation as well. The way those accounts are mentioned, they are all archaic. Now you have a lot of instruments, data. You can shift this and there, but we continue to present the budget in a so confused form, and a lot of the gaps and inanities are hidden under those archaic systems. I have written a lot about this, but I think we need to go into detail maybe later. Now, coming to budget proper, I think the biggest allocation, in this budget goes to interest payments. So 11 lakh 62,000 crores goes to interest payment. So no other department has got so much. The highest is 24%. That is for the interest payment, and next biggest allocation is to railways, followed by defense. So rural development comes somewhere much later. I think some 5.6%. Now, I think this is not discussed enough. The debt which is rising on Indian government, I think it has reached a very high. And if you look at the data again, 22, 23, they mention it is 1 crore 54 lakh 78,987 crores. So that is 1.5 crores of debt is government of India. So one is, where is the capital formation for this debt? People, government keeps saying we are raising loans to develop infrastructure and GDP growth rate. So where is the capital formation? The economic survey has not informed us and how much capital formation has happened because of this debt, and where it has happened, whether it has happened in rural India or in urban India, and where it has happened. I think that's a big question. This budget again, right now we have been staring at a lot of climate crisis events in India, but government has completely ignored the vulnerable communities. So, who are these vulnerable communities, and what kind of financial requirements are they to alleviate their problems? I think that's completely absent. So even though we talk in every climate change conference, India is been at the forefront, asking for loss and damage, mitigation, adaptation. But in the budget, union budget, it's completely silent about it. So we have seen last 2 months, in June, almost 1,600 people died due to heat waves. And just yesterday, I read that government refused any compensation for them because the finance panel said heat wave is not a disaster at all. So I think these people are insulated from the climate change because they are in air conditioner cars and rooms, and they don't understand what's happening in the rural area and what kind of impacts climate change is happening on agriculture and on the rural population and the large workforce which we have been discussing. Coming to 9 priorities, budget itself is a prioritization in a sense, prioritizing, setting a path for the growth. But within that, Nirmala Sitharaman brings up 9 priorities. I feel it's only to, a facade rather than any serious academic method of prioritizing the government action. So within this, how come these 9 priorities were listed? What made government to list them? If you go back to economic survey again, of course, government economic survey says agriculture has performed well. I mean, in terms of output, so a lot of grain production is increasing. But then it says it needs reforms. But where the reforms are required, why those reforms are required when the production is way beyond our expectation? Of course, that's not there. But I'm just saying economic survey does not help us in understanding how these priorities have been listed and what made the government to list them. Now, within that, you can see that rural development or some contribution to rural economy is missing among all the 9 priorities. And the top priority, of course, some comments were made earlier by the speakers. I think research, research is required on what and for what? I think that's a question. But now, Nirmala Sitharaman mentioned research allocation will be given under challenge mode. Challenge mode, I think she forgot to mention Swiss challenge mode. Probably it means they are going to auction or tender public resources for research. I think that's what I can understand from what she's saying. And other, I think some 8 actions have been mentioned, and all the actions are very peripheral and I mean, they don't give any confidence that Indian government is trying to address the productivity issue or the resilience of agriculture, especially in terms of the income for the farmers. I think government itself and also economic survey itself mentions farmers are getting only 27 rupees per day, but then there is none of these priority actions try to help us in understanding how that income will increase or double. Doubling income was the major objective of the government before elections. So again, that's not there, and there are inherent contradictions. They say there is a high food grain production, but then there is high food inflation as well, and then we are increasing a lot of agriculture imports, and they have increased in the last 7-8 years, and allocations which are made. So all this, between all these 4 factors, the contradiction is very apparent and very stark. So, and I think even analysts in the media ignored this completely. And coming to the employment issue, now employment, okay, I'll come to employment later. This is about environmental concerns. So, the government talks about energy transition, maybe from coal to renewable energies. But what about the job losses which are going to follow? And how does the government respond to those job losses? In fact, I think I was told coal sector has at least 5 crore employment in various levels. And if you are trying to reduce coal, uh, we need to look at how to accommodate these people in renewable energy or wherever. So, and even in agriculture, when we are talking of transition, of course, natural farming increases the potential of employment for manual employment. But then government is talking of digital agriculture, digitization of agriculture. So even that means there is job losses in that sector as well. So overall, when we are talking of this transition, energy transition, I think whatever is being discussed or allocations are made, they are only peripheral and superficial, and they don't go deep enough to reflect what government of India itself is discussing in climate change conferences. Now, the natural capital formation is completely ignored. Even while government is talking about 11 lakh crores investment in infrastructure investment. Now we know this means Bharat, that Bharat Mala, all those, bridges, roads, airports. So all these activities are nature destruction activities. So we have this, there is a balance between them. because we have seen in Himachal Pradesh, in Uttarakhand, and Sikkim, even Northeast India, wherever this infrastructure investment has happened, natural capital has been destroyed, and that has impacted agriculture, food production, and even rural employment. So there is no balance, or there is no discussion at all and how this 11 lakh crores is going to impact Indian natural.
Sir, we will be soon running short of time. Can you?
Yeah, finally, this is a final one.
Thank you.
And coming to employment, I think there is allocation for 10,000 crore employment. But my question is, where is the incentive for protecting the existing livelihoods and existing rural employment? Especially handloom sector employs 50 lakh people. But the handloom sector gets only 200 crores and 10,000 crores is given to companies, all the five schemes within employment sector, they go only to reinforce the, jobs rather than, create new employment. So I think natural fiber sector, it includes cotton, silk, jute, wool, all these natural fibers for complete supply chain employs at least 10 crore people. None of these sectors have got any allocation in this, but the name of employment and skilling is used only to create employment, probably 20 lakh. 20 lakh is that too over 5 years. So I'm stopping here, but I think all these issues are relevant for this budget, and I feel this budget has nothing. In fact, the government has BJP has not learned anything from this electoral losses.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Particularly your concern about where the capital formation is taking place, whether it is in rural sector or urban sector, that is worth exploring. We'll move on to the next speaker, Dr. Javed Alam Khan. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I have heard many of previous speakers, so I am not going to repeat those points. Mainly, since we are discussing on the budget, so the first questions arises that whether our budgeting process really, need based or not, and how the budgeting process is being done. So usually, our budgeting is based on the incremental budgeting. And before that, we don't follow the processes related to need assessment, planning, and finally, we, focusing just on the incremental budgeting. So it could be 5%, 10%, like that. In the previous, discussion by the speakers that what is the situation of the utilization. So we report the data at the 3 point of time, P, RE, and actual. And actual has the BS lag. After auditing by CAG, that data is being provided. So yeah, it's a big problem actually. If you see the agricultural scheme, really, I was analyzing the data. So even in some year, only 50% of the fund were utilized under several schemes. So this is a big challenge. And usually in our discussion, we focus on B, and politicians are very much interested in ruling party to show the uh, their budget estimates, and we end up like that. But yeah, we need to focus on the whole budgeting processes, and also we should look at the three the stages B, RE, and actual expenditure. Now, when we discuss about the rural realities, so I think everybody is aware about the India's reality, and rural people are suffering more than that, and the big issues already have been highlighted. So when we focus on the budget, so we cover usually agriculture and allied sector. We focus on the rural development, but we don't focus much on the Panchayati Raj ministry. So that is the integral part of our rural development, our rural economy, and if we see the overall budget of the agriculture and rural development, so it is very well known fact that budget has been stagnated. If we analyze uh, the agriculture and allied sector budget, usually we find that for last 3-4 financial years, uh, in terms of GDP, allocation has not increased. So you can find that just 0.4% of GDP is for agriculture over the years, like in the recent years. We usually see the absolute number. So I already shared that it's an incremental budgeting. So some budgets allocation in terms of crore increasing here and there, but overall budget is stagnated. And similarly, the situation is same with rural development as well. So rural development has a little bit more fund. So it the development for rural development ministry is also almost, you can say, like in 22-23 actual budget, it's just 0.6% of GDP, and just you can see in the RE 0.57, 0.54, 0.54 in this budget. So almost there is not much increase. If we see the rural realities as the title it shows. So in that way, already I shared that there is a need for need assessment and planning, and then budgeting should follow. And if we see the the different stages when we try to understand the budget, so usually we should the budget in the framework of outlays, outputs, and outcomes. So outcomes, we see the rural challenges already. So it means that whatever outlays are there and outputs are there, I think they're not supporting the real issues. I will, cover a little bit more related to schemes, major schemes of the Ministry of Rural Development first, and then I'll come to the Ministry of Panchayati Raj. So even I already shared that the budget is stagnant in terms of the GDP, so, allocation, budget allocation. So same situation is we can find in the major schemes of the Ministry of Rural Development, except Pradhan Mantri Karam Awas Yojana, and Manrega could be best way out to mitigate the rural problems. But the budget allocation is almost, if we see the actual budget, 22-23, so it was 91,000 crore, and then from last, three, point of data, RE, and then interim budget, and then the current budget presentation, it's 86,000 crore. So the budget is almost stagnant, and it has several issues also. Like in this era of inflation, the scheme is facing two major issues. That is the wage rate, and then delays in wages. So that wage rate should have been increased, and it should be inflation index, but that is not taken care of. Likewise, the wage delays, those who are doing these studies, they might know that the delay in the receipt of wages by the worker. Even if we talk about the NRLM, that is, like since we are discussing the unemployment certificate. So NRLM has the, same situation in terms of budget allocation. It has not increased much in the actual budget 22-23. It was 12,000 crore. And then in RE, we can find 14,000 crore. Again, in this budget, 15,000 crore. No increase has been made. Even if we see the interim budget and this budget. Likewise, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So yeah, government is a little bit, concerned about this scheme, but I would say that yeah, the unit cost has been increased, but that is still insufficient. And then the allocation in this budget is 55,000 crore, which has increased from revised budget, which was 30,000 crore. So there is a a little jump, but like in 2020 government, has the actual expenditure of 45,000 crore. So in this budget, I can say that focus has been given to the, this PMGSY, interested to extend it, and let's see, whatever announcement has been made, I think that is not relating to the budget allocation. So the budget for this scheme, PMGSY, it was 17,000 crore, and in this budget, this is 12,000 crore. So here, just I would like to highlight that when we talk about the budget, so we should try to understand that why budgets are not getting utilized. So for that, we should also see the mechanism of implementation and systemic problems, then absorption capacity of the administrative apparatus, and more relevant is the role of Panchayati Raj institutions, decentralization. So for last for last many years, the decentralized community, like in civil society, academia, they are not much raising the problem of centralization. And if you see the budget of the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, it used to be 10,000 crore, and there used to be some major schemes. Now we are stuck with this one scheme, and the allocation has
Doctor,
promised.
you'll have to. Hello.
Yes.
Can you please wind up? Conclude.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you because we are really running short of time.
Yes. Just I'm concluding. Yes,
Okay.
please. Just I'm concluding. So for Panchayati Raj Ministry, this Gram Swaraj Abhiyan used to be a major scheme, and I would say that it's a very good scheme, but government has not been able to absorb the fund. Around 6,000 crore were targeted by 25-26, but the objective of these schemes are not being fulfilled, and the dream was to localize the SDG, because we have to meet the SDG target by 2030. And this scheme used to be a very supportive scheme for the strengthening the Panchayati Raj institution, but we could not able to do it. So I'll conclude here, and I
Thank you. Thank you.
these
Thank
three
Move
departments
on to the next speaker. We are really running short of time. Mr. Raman VR.
Yes, sir. I'm Raman VR.
Yes.
I'm from Center for Sustainable Agriculture. A couple of things, because all the speakers have already highlighted the issues with the budget. I pick up 3 points. One is the natural farming thing, because government of India was talking about natural farming from a long time. And they said they will reach out to about a crore farmers, but the budget allocation is only 356 crores, which is 356 rupees per farmer. And even if we calculate every year, they will reach out to few people. For 1 crore people, they may reach out in the next 3 years as planned. It's a meager amount, which is not sufficient at all. Just to put you in a perspective, chemical fertilizer subsidy per acre would be around 7,000 rupees on average. So by spending just 3,000 rupees, 300 rupees, and then expecting farmers to shift, taking the entire burden of transition on their own head is not going to happen. So government needs to relook into this. Shifting towards natural farming is very essential, given the kind of ecological crisis we are facing and also the crisis with climate change. So we need to look at how this can happen. And with this kind of budgets, it's not going to work. Second important issue is also about the research, which was brought up again and again. The government said it will increase the research, but what research and then what is the accountability of the research system is not spelled out properly. The deliverables of the agricultural research system is very, very low, and they are not able to contribute, and they are not able to make transition with the changing socio-economic and ecological conditions of agriculture. For example, if you look at in 1960s, the fertilizer productivity was, for every kg of fertilizer, it used to give around 13 kg production. Today, it is just about 2.5 kg. This whole reduction is because of the soil fertility, and the research system still talks about developing new varieties. New varieties doesn't perform. The soil is not good, and no focus on soil in any way in this budget came up. Similarly, the land holdings are going down significantly, and today average land holding is just 1 hectare. And with that, the income of farmers from crop production is going down significantly. It is just about 20% in Andhra Pradesh, probably around national average is around 37%. Given that situation, unless we focus on other income sources in the rural areas which can aggregate for the rural households, things are not going to work. And there is a very narrow focus on crops and that to improving crop productivity. So research system has to change significantly. Third important area is about the livelihoods, and there is a rural livelihoods mission, and also there are a number of programs going on livelihoods, but the focus on livelihoods, unless they shift to support farmers end-to-end, farm households end-to-end, and also rural youth end-to-end, so that they can get into new enterprises and get into markets, things are not going to work. I think these are the three important areas. And then the budget certainly is a disappointment because the new government was expected to come with a new approach to agriculture, particularly after the last few years debate on the markets. There is no announcement on how the new markets would be addressed, because marketing challenges are also very high. The market reforms are much needed. The age-old laws are still continuing. There were efforts, and then there was resistance from the farmers. So they made it. They wanted to make a change, but don't know. They said they will come back with new ideas, but no ideas came up. And lastly, Punjab, Haryana, there is a severe crisis, particularly with the soils and water, and shift from rice and wheat cultivation is very essential. And particularly government was talking about climate change adaptation and net zero by 2070 and 50% reduction in emissions by 2030. But no effort has been made on how rice and wheat farmers' problems will be addressed, and then how crop production shift can happen in these areas. No effort has been made on that. I think this budget has missed several points. Let's hope at least next year when they come with a full budget, this is an interim budget, but next time when they come with a full budget, probably they'll come with better ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sticking to the time allotted to you. Now we'll move on to the last speaker, Dr. Sridevi. Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Very good afternoon to all of you. So all the previous speakers has very rightly focused on the various issues relating to the rural India. So I will try to take from there to the food and nutrition security related aspects of the budget allocation. Because the majority of the schemes and essential programs, that state support programs, majority of the marginalized communities depend upon these programs, and any changes or in the reduction in the funding will actually impacting their food and nutrition security as well as overall well-being. So the basic question is, what is the impact on the poor as well as the marginalized communities this budget is going to provide? So as Professor R S Deshpande has already said, and others are also mentioned, India spends only around 0.4% of the agriculture GDP on research and development, which is far below the levels of the China and Brazil and some of the other developed nations. So this has a greater impact on the lower productivity in agriculture, as well as the agriculture sector in India suffers with the low productivity, as well as the low profits or the low margins to the farmers. And with the changing climate change, it will have a greater impact on the wages as well as the employment, and in turn influences the intra-household food distribution as well as the nutrition security also. So if we look at the allocation, this budget for the food subsidy, it actually declined when we compare it with the decadal changes from the 2015 to 2024 and 25. It has declined from 7.79% to 4.26%. Similarly, the social welfare funding has also dropped in decadal terms, and then education and the expenditure on the education has also declined when we look at the last one decade. And allocation to the major schemes, as already one of the speaker has mentioned already, it has a greater impact on the various groups in terms of gender or in terms of the marginalized social groups, such as the MGNREGA program, where over the decades we see that there is a decline by 1.78%, and the National Sample Assistance Program also. But my major emphasis would be on the PM Poshan, which the program replacing the midday meal scheme has seen a drastic cut in the expenditure from 0.51% to the 0.2%. And the other important aspect is that the decline in the agriculture research expenditure has a greater impact because on the productivity levels as well as the agriculture wages also. There exists, the literature basically says that any increase in the R&D expenditure would actually increase the agricultural GDP in terms of the agriculture GDP by 10 times. So which implies a decline in the agriculture R&D expenditure will have a greater impact on the employment as well as the wages also. As in the agriculture R&D expenditure, 89% comes from the public sector and 11% from the private sector. So the agriculture research intensity was 0.75% in 2008 and 9, and it has declined to 0.43% in 2022-23. This may further fall if we look at the numbers of the 2024 and 25 budget allocation. And in terms of the employment, there is a rise in the level of the unemployment as well as the underemployment as per the Indian Employment Report, which was released in 2024 March. But interestingly, there is a rise in the labor force participation, especially female labor force participation. 2018, it was 23.3%, and now it has actually increased compared to 2018. So which basically says that there is a lot of opportunity needs to be created in the rural India to absorb the rise in the labor force participation, basically from the females, because that will have a greater impact on the children nutritional security as well as the education levels at the household level. And the other important aspect is, if we look at the percentage of the unpaid family labor work in males, it is only 9.3%, but females contributed to 36.5%. So the different female and the male unpaid family labor employment was around 31.4% in rural areas, against the 8.1% in the urban areas. So that calls for the greater opportunities need to be created in the agriculture sector for the rural female participation rate further to increase. In terms of the nutrition, if we look at now, based upon the NFHS 4 and 5, the nutritional malnutrition levels are much higher among the scheduled tribe children compared to the other social groups. And the 36% of the children being stunted and 32% of the children underweight. The cut in the Anganwadi centers budget allocation has a greater impact on these numbers. Then the question is, what we are talking about, that Vikasit Bharat by 2047 or zero hunger by 2030, can we actually reach to the goals, given that 2% decline per annum from now on in terms of the stunting and the underweight children? So the 1.5% cut in the Anganwadi program budget, reducing it from the around 21.523 crore in 2023 to the 21,000 crores in 2024 and 25. A cause for the question, are we really focusing on the child malnutritional indicators, as all the numbers speak that we are actually, India is one of the vulnerable state in terms of the food and nutrition security. And there is also another issue. There is also underutilization of the funds under these various programs is also, but that is because of the various bureaucratic reasons. As a part of one of our research, when we are interviewing with the various government officials, the bureaucratic rules actually lay down, makes them not utilize the allocated funds also. But why the performance of the Anganwadi centers is not so efficient is the one of the important reasons is the so-called vacancies of the staff. The child and development project officers, around 31% of the positions were always vacant, and supervisors 33%. And in terms of the Anganwadi helpers and the Anganwadi workers, more than 8% of the vacancies throughout are vacant. These numbers are taken from the Women and the Child Development report from 2021. So, and as a part of the micro level analysis as well as the macro level data, we found that majority of the Anganwadis do not have the basic facilities also. So if we look at the in terms of the facilities, majority of them do not have their own buildings or the drinking water facilities and the toilet facilities or the sanitation facilities. So there is a need for allocating higher budget for the Anganwadi centers. And the other important reason is that generally we always tend to go for the macro level centralized policies for majority of these programs, but there exist the significant disparities across the states as well as within the state or within the urban and the rural sectors. Geographical locations matters, and the communities live there also matters. So there is a need to go for the regional approach while talking about the policies towards the food and nutrition security as well as the agricultural development also. And the other important aspect is the neglect of the agriculture research and development will have a greater impact on the various social groups and the genders in a different way. All may not have the similar kind of the impacts. Hence, it is essential to look at the state support programs with the orientation to the inclusion of the various groups. So with this overall, I say that the Vision Vikasit Bharat of the 2047 could remain unrealized if the agrarian rural economy is left behind, as well as different social groups are left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sridevi. In fact, you have added new dimension to our discussion when you brought out the issues related to food security, particularly nutrition security, and of course, issues related to the other ecosystem, that is social sector. Very interesting. Dr. Arjun, how do you take it forward? Because we are exceeded the time allotted. Can we have one or two questions?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Now it is open to the floor. Is there any question you'd like to take up?
Vikta, do you have any questions?
So it's a very small question.
Yeah.
So it's a very small question, sir, towards any of the panelists.
There is a hand raised from attendees, Ashutosh Dubey.
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Okay. So one question from my end is that how does the inflation differ in rural and urban areas, and how does that factor into other things?
Can you please repeat the question?
So my question is, how does the inflation differ in rural and urban areas? Because considering they have similar consumption baskets, etc. So, and how does that factor into other things and other decisions?
See, the consumption pattern marginally differs from between rural and urban areas, right? And there are many factors which can be attributed to differential inflation rates between rural and urban. Transaction cost is one, transport is another one, and in the food segment, like Professor, he was talking about aggregators. There will be a lot of intervention, right? Whereas, I mean, when it comes to urban, now quite surprisingly, it looks like even for rural mass also, right? They cannot escape from the aggregators. I'm not referring to the farmers, but I'm talking about consumers, and they're also so. In a way, if not too significantly, there are differences in the consumption pattern, and other issues like transportation, transaction, and the margin captured by the middleman, right, etc. So there can be, but the issue is what happens when there is excess in, what happens when there is a lot of inflation. And we know between rural sector and urban sector, the the poor in the country, most of them, they are in the rural sector. So when their real wage is not rising, then the kind of pauperization what we talk of, that continues to persist. That's the reason we had to keep a particular, we had to have a special focus on inflation tendencies in the rural sector.
Can I clarify? Can I clarify, sir?
I don't know if anyone
Ye to.
else.
Yes. Can I clarify?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Tripta. The rural inflation is computed on CPI, Consumer Price Index for agricultural laborers. Urban inflation is computed at Consumer Price Index of industrial workers. Now, the two things have different food baskets. Now, in that, food inflation is computed on the basis of food basket. Before mid-90s, it was only the wholesale price index which was used in order to compute inflation. Even today, that inflation rate is available. But presently, why are we worried? Because this is directly faced by the consumer. Therefore, it is computed on consumer price index, either for agricultural labor or for industrial workers.
Right. Got it,
There
sir.
is one thing which I need to clarify. Narasimha Saab, Reddy Saab, he had said that the capital formation has not taken place. I need to correct. That is, in the first quarter of 2023, first quarter of 2024, it is 15,701 billion rupees was the total capital formation, which was 14,066 billion rupees in the first quarter of 2023, which means in the 3 quarters, we got additionally 1653 billion rupees. Now, I'll clarify only one thing, that the capital formation data is not exactly, will never match exactly to borrowings or the capital borrowed from elsewhere. It will tally with the capital formation only. Thank you.
Yes, just to add to the point of Professor Deshpande, now if you look at us, there's a additional information I'd like to share. If you look at CPA new series introduced in 2010 and subsequently revised within 2 years in 2012, you'll find that, in that CPA, we have done away with AL and IW kind of differences. Rather, we have got the same basket of items used for both rural and urban. And in terms of methodology, it is not remarkably different. It is also using more or less the same methodology. So when I was actually referring to rural inflation rate as opposed to urban inflation rate, in fact, I have taken data from the CPA new series.
I think sir got disconnected and have him back in this.
Yes.
No, I had a point to make. Meanwhile, one is Tripta, when you are asking of food inflation comparison. I'm not going into those figures which are already mentioned, but in rural areas, especially where non-food production is happening, I think Deshpande or Sekhar was saying commercial agriculture is increasing. So wherever this commercial agriculture is there Annadata is looking for Anna. There is no food for farmers. I think that's becoming clear, and NIN data on anemia shows, wherever cotton is grown, anemia is spreading like anything. So the point is, food insecurity is increasing in rural areas. I think Sridevi brought it out. The security is not only in terms of the economic access, but also the physical access. And the diversity of food is also gone down. So I think all this is not captured by this inflation data. I mean, that's what I think. Now, coming to Deshpande ji talking about capital formation, I'm not saying debt equals to capital formation, but that's what government explains away, saying whenever the questions are raised about debt, they say, "Oh no, we have this done." So that's where I'm saying there's no match. But even otherwise, can the government, in detail explain why this debt is increasing and where that debt is going? I think that's not done at all. And so that's where my question is.
Urban inflation is the data are collected from 1114 rural markets for computing rural inflation, and 1081 urban markets. That's the difference. Apart from that, the consumer price index is built on these two different sets of data. That's why there is a difference.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other question?
Thank you for asking one question, Shreya.
There is
Tripta.
There is a attendee who is raising his hand, Ashutosh Dubey. Can you ask?
Ashutosh ji? Yes, you can unmute and ask your question. Ashutosh ji?
You might have left.
Okay.
But not responding. Okay.
So,
you can type in the Q&A box.
okay.
Right.
There is no question, right? I think.
Yes. I think we also shoot up time. We can go for a final round or any discussion you want to have. Sir?
No. Any panelist, anybody would like to give your concluding remarks? Not more than 1 minute.
Yes. We can start in same.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Can I?
The same order? Yeah. Dr. Professor Deshpande, would you like to?
Nothing much. In fact, the discussion was excellent, and I felt very happy. There are a few things which we need to understand. One thing somebody said, interim budget. It was not an interim budget. It was a regular budget, and a budget is one step in the long run policy of the government, whatever the policy is. And we have been following the free market or market centric policies right from 91. Market-centric policies have a definite bias towards market operators, and largely rich people are the market operators. So the bias is built in the market itself. Government, how much can it correct? Because the government as a market, you take government institution as a market, is also represented by rich. I want to work out sometime the wealth of nations by taking the Professor Ram Singh of Delhi School of Economics has brought out is on an average not less than 10-12 crores. So market-centric approach will have this exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Professor Sekhar?
Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Sekhar?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. The government's focus, not only this government, earlier governments also, the predominant focus of the government has always been towards growth, agri growth. So, but agricultural growth does not automatically translate into increase in farmers' income. These are different things actually. So the mechanisms are different. I think it's time the government focuses on how to improve farmers' income. What are the ways, not just through MSP, but also through other means. There are other ways of doing that, and I think they put their mind to that. That's my wish.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor D. Narasimha.
Yeah, I just want to add that we have not done enough.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I just want to add one aspect is, budget formulation. I know as Deshpande ji was also trying to point out, it should be related to policy before and after. But I think some of these schemes we don't find that. So we need to look at, like the scheme given to Kisan Samman Yojana. So it's given to 6,000 rupees, and what is that for, and how long they are going to continue. There's no policy in that. And secondly, these policies, before and after policies, what is the influence behind that? I think that is still it's a gap. Professor Sekhar mentioned in rural areas, they talk of, wax, candle making, but on the other hand, in the rural area, there is some other employment is there. That's because, USAID supports the candle
You
making.
can be brief. Yes, we
Yeah,
have
finally. So they want to shift many people from away from agriculture and rural economy. So I think this kind of influences still we need to explore and understand about.
Okay. Dr. Javed?
Thank you, sir. I think my submission would be that budget has to be democratized, and people's participation should be increased, and the early stages of the budgeting, I think, are very important, and we should work on all these stages and processes of budgeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Sridevi, you have got any concluding observation?
Yeah, given the inequality in rural sector in terms of access to land and income, this sector also faces a specific problems of the low productivity and fragmentation of the land and climate change. There is a need for significant increase in the research and development, as well as the budget should also focus on the generating the employment opportunities, as well as the change in the wages also, which in turn will be influencing the wages, because last one decade the wages are actually remaining to be low level, or it is the stagnant. That's it. That will have a greater impact at the food and nutrition security at the household.
Particularly real wage rate. It is
exactly.
Okay, we have heard all the panelists giving their opinion. I'll just build one small story based on what Professor Sekhar was talking about. The government, not only this government, but during the last couple of years, like what Professor Deshpande was talking, all these market-centric policies, they are excessively focused on growth. But in the previous decades, if you see a lot of writings that came on Indian economy, they were all worried about the process of growth, not so much about the growth. Growth is an outcome. But why people were worried about the process of growth? Because they felt that we have to create a vibrant internal market, we have to expand our production. But all that required a kind of changing of class structure, which required a kind of redistribution of means of production. Now, to what extent we have achieved, it remains a question, but it's a radical redistribution. We cannot achieve that easily. But at the same time, incrementally, what we can achieve is we have to focus whether the process of growth is actually neglecting any particular section. So in that way, like what just now Sridev was talking about, the income distribution, if it remains uneven, then it leads to a lot more questions. And that is one aspect. I think the last 1 or 2 decades we are missing out. I think it is time that we focus on the process of growth, and particularly in the rural sector, which still holds the main key to, higher growth rate, whatever you want to achieve, right? We cannot be neglected. And that is given the ecosystem in rural area, right? The income inequality not only is rising rapidly, but it is actually moving in a direction we don't know whether it is going to cause any kind of social restlessness in future. I think that's kind of observation I have. And like what Professor Sekhar also was talking about, since we probably the lack of continuity what we are having, like this year they introduced something, lot of allocation. Next year, we don't know whether the program will continue to exist or not. Right? For some of the continuing programs, we don't see much allocation coming in the desired manner. For instance, we are talking about, that improving nutrition security, improving the Anganwadi setup. But the kind of allocation that is taking place, we are not seeing in any meaningful direction. So this kind of lack of continuity is because we are not focused on the process of growth. I think it's time we reflect on the process of growth rather than just achieving the growth. I think with these few observations, I would like to bring this panel discussion to a close. Thank you so much, Dr. Arjun, once again for taking this wonderful initiative. And over to you, sir. Thank you so much. I would like to thank the panelists for taking time from their regular schedule and joining us for now it's almost 2 hours. Thank you so much, sir. Looking forward to seeing you in some other forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Over to Dr. Arjun.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, and to all the panelists for being here and enlightening us. So quickly, Tripta, for a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. So as we come to an end of today's discussion, I, Tripta Behra, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, CHURS. I would like to thank all of you for attending today's deliberation, a panel discussion on rural realities and the Union Budget 2024-25 as a part of IMPRI's 5th annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of the Union Budget 2024-25. We are grateful to our chair for the session, Dr. J. Dennis Rajakumar ji, our esteemed panelists, Professor R S Deshpande ji, Mr. VR Raman ji, Professor C.S.C. Sekhar ji, Dr. D. Narasimha Reddy ji, Dr. Javed Alam Khan ji, Dr. Raman Janevelu GVG, Professor Gumadi Sridevi ji, for taking part in the discussion and enlightening us. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a very good day ahead. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.